There have been a lot of stress in the Fusion 360 community over the changes coming in personal hobbyist license, some starting October 1st and some taking into effect in January next year. I think there have been a lot of confusion and misunderstandings, and Autodesk definitely need to take some of the blame for how this was communicated out. Fusion 360 is still free. I'm going to share an update with you since the news broke a couple of weeks ago. In my opinion, Fusion 360 is still the best option for you to use on your personal projects. To be clear, this is my own YouTube channel. I have never monetized the channel, but it means that I never made any money or gotten any cut from the content that I've created here or the relationship that you and I have. But I do want to be clear that I am employed at Autodesk. I am affiliated and part of the team for Fusion 360. I wanted to make this video on my terms, my words, and my thoughts. I want to cover three things in this video. One, I want to make sure that all the information gets out there. Two, I want to highlight what is really changing. And three, in the end, I'll give you my opinion. I know many of you have spent hours watching my videos. Thank you. And you might have heard me refer to myself as a busboy. Now, because some people are watching this from around the world, let me just explain. In the US, a busboy is normally a young college kid who is cleaning off dirty dishes and cleaning tables at a restaurant when the guest leaves. A busboy is like the lowest paid person in a restaurant. Now, you wouldn't go to a busboy and ask them why they served Brussels sprouts instead of asparagus with the salmon. For that, you would ask the chef. What you're about to see is a call I had with Steve Hooper. Steve Hooper is VP and General Manager of Fusion 360. He is the master chef.
Thank you so much for taking the time to do this quick call.
Not at all. It's a pleasure, Lars. It's good to talk to you.
So I just want to make clear for anybody who's watching this that you and I have known each other for about 6 years. We have been in massive meetings together. We have had dinner together. We have had coffee at Pier 9, chit-chatting about Fusion 360 and the future and how everything is going. And I don't know if it's mutual, but if you showed up at my front door at 9 o'clock at night, I would let you sleep on my couch.
Nice. Yes, it's mutual. Yeah.
But I'm going to jump right in. And Steve, why did we make these changes to the personal licenses for Fusion 360?
So, yeah, I mean, the reason we made the changes is because, and this comes from a really good place, trust me, we're super passionate about the maker and hobbyist communities. And so we needed a way to make sure that we were able to stand behind the personal entitlement long into the future. We wanted to protect it as much as we can. Now, of course, we're a commercial business, so we have to make sure that we're able to prevent misuse of that personal entitlement as much as possible. So all these changes, they were all done with good intent. And I know that might be difficult for some people to appreciate, and some people will be cynical and say that, you know, we've done these changes to somehow try and manipulate the community. But I wish people would genuinely believe me when I say it was done from a good point of view. It was done with good intent to ensure that we could protect our commitment to that personal entitlement long into the future and ensure that it just wasn't being misused, because the more commercially successful Fusion is, the more we can afford to invest in our other areas of interest, which are in the maker and hobbyist communities and in the educational community as well. Same thing goes for the educational license, you see. We just needed to make sure that in both cases, those entitlement types are being genuinely used for what they were designed to be used for and not being abused in the commercial environment, because if they undermine the commercial success of Fusion, it puts all those entitlements in jeopardy. So our job is to just make sure that we can continue to commit to providing those design and manufacturing capabilities to people who want to use them in their spare time as a hobby freely. And so that's why we made the changes.
And it makes sense, right? Like, you want to create a piece of software that you can make money off, because it's a business, we got to make money. But at the same time, you also want to have a personal edition that somebody's working on their personal projects at home, either if it is they got to build a deck or if they got to have a small CNC or a 3D print or tinkering with. Somehow there needs to be some kind of a separation in there to be able to get somebody who needs to use a commercial license to actually go and use that, right?
Yeah, for sure. And to be clear, I mean, it's mutually beneficial. That's always been our belief. And I hope that's why people can trust me when I say this, because there is a benefit to the general Fusion community, the goodness that makers and hobbyists bring to our online forums in terms of like the videos that you share freely with people. They help educate everybody. The community support helps to encourage usage and adoption. And it stimulates general awareness of Fusion. So there is a benefit to the Fusion business. So there's definitely a good quid pro quo between the two communities, and that's why we're absolutely committed to it. There's no way that we would want to do something that, in any way hindered that community. So our goal with the limitations that we put in place was to ensure that we could protect as much of the functional usage that people enjoy today as possible, while just preventing misuse of that free entitlement in the commercial communities. So that was basically why we made the changes. And we felt that things like the active document limitation, I think when people understand that fully, they'll realize that for a genuine hobbyist or maker, that isn't actually restrictive at all. It should genuinely enable anyone in that community to carry on doing the work that they're doing today quite freely without any feeling of restriction. For a commercial user, on the other hand, I think it probably would create a problem, and that's intentional because that entitlement type is specifically not designed for them. And so we felt that we reached a pretty good balance there. But what I will say is, I think as an organization, and certainly personally, I made a mistake by not ensuring that that was adequately communicated. So for example, I saw a lot of misinterpretation in our description of the active document limitation, and that was totally our fault. I should have been better at ensuring that we as a team were communicating what that limitation would look like and feel like from a user experience perspective. So one thing I want to follow up on with the team is to record a few videos so that people can actually see it in action for themselves. Because I think when they see that, they'll realize that as a maker or a hobbyist, it's really not that restrictive. Because I think at the moment, the description that we put together, although well-intended, leaves some openness to interpretation. And I think as a result, people have imagined the worst case scenario, and it really isn't that. So yeah, that's one thing I think we could have done better, and it's something we'll follow up on in terms of communication.
Yeah, and I think it's also, I mean, when you see the communication that came out, you see the tables, it's very easy to jump to the worst case scenario very quickly, where, if you are a professional, I'm comparing when I used to work at Ritlam and, programming CNC machines, like you're chasing, if you can shave off 10 minutes of making a part, that's money in your pocket. And you need that 10 minutes so you can eat. Where as a hobbyist or working on a personal project, it's a little bit more lenient that if you have to, if the process gets slowed down a little bit, now it can't be a hindering, so you can't maybe do something.
Yeah.
If it's slowed down a little bit, I'll probably just go over and get a cup of coffee and be happy with that. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
On the flip side, though, when there's good feedback, and I know some people were cynical and they, understandably, they feel we're a big corporate organization and that we'll hide behind a wall and not want to listen to feedback. And trust me when I say this, we listen to feedback everywhere. So everyone on our team trawls through the Facebook forums, through the online forums, through the Autodesk community forums. We listen to as much as we can. When we wake up in the morning, trust me, we go through those threads. Last thing in the evening, we go through those threads. We don't always comment straight away because a lot of the time we're trying to just digest the information. And also there's some quantification that needs to happen, right? So you need to understand when we make a change like that, there's always going to be some negative impact to a degree. Our job is to minimize that, to make it as infinitesimally small as possible. But in some cases we get it wrong, right? So One area that I feel that we've adjusted our perspective on now, having listened to the feedback, is around STEP. So one thing that we hadn't anticipated when we were mapping out some of the limitations that we wanted to employ, we just hadn't fully understood the amount of community traction there were in forums like Thingiverse, for example, and with makers and hobbyists exchanging models and using STEP as the medium to do that exchange in those environments. So we didn't want to jump to a conclusion. So we listened to a lot of the feedback and we quantified it. So we have some tools that allow us to look at online social communities and quantify the amount of sentiment around a particular topic. We can also look at data, so we can see like how many STEP imports, exports are going on. And it became quickly clear to us that that was one area that we probably needed to rethink. So we will ensure that we keep STEP in the client for Fusion 360 to ensure that personal users can continue to export STEP. So that was one thing that I did want to emphasize, that we do listen. And if there is genuine feedback, of course, you know, everyone's going to have feedback on every decision, and we can't please all the people all the time. But when there's a body of evidence and there's hard data that we can look at that supports some of that feedback, then we genuinely do want to do the right thing, and we'll listen to the feedback and we'll admit we got it wrong, I got it wrong, and we'll make that change, that amendment to look after that community. Because like I said, the last thing we wanted to do was penalize this group of users. The intent behind these decisions was to do quite the reverse. It was to protect the personal edition entitlement type, and to make sure that we could continue to fund it well into the future. So I don't want anyone worrying that it's going away or this is a gradual erosion of the capabilities and that it'll disappear. It's quite the opposite. We wanted to make sure that we consolidated the changes in one hit, and that we were able to communicate that clearly and concisely. And in a couple of cases, I think we got it wrong. So we need to reflect on that, amend the decisions, and communicate it appropriately. You know, another area I did see, again, just in terms of how we communicate, we said that the personal edition wouldn't be able to use extensions, which to us, we felt that that language was self-explanatory, which again was a mistake. To us, extensions are a form of functionality that users can pay to turn on. So we have like a machining extension and an additive manufacturing extension. So these are very deep levels of functionality for specialist personas in the commercial community. Now, extensions is a term that we use to describe those units of functionality that you can turn on selectively, but we hadn't appreciated that it might be misinterpreted as things like Python scripts or add-ins that you get from the App Store. So, of course, there'll be no limitations to those, but unfortunately, that use of language wasn't clear to people. So, again, I'd apologize for that. We should have thought about that more deeply. Sometimes it's, you know, these are avoidable mistakes. So I hope we're able to clarify it here in your video. And of course, we'll do a better job of communicating in the future.
And I also want to just echo to anybody who's watching here. So no doubt Autodesk is a big company, a big corporation. But knowing, and I know a lot of the people who is building this software and interacting and making this happen, and it's genuine good people who is trying to do great work and deliver a great product. And the fact that we have this personal license that makes everybody being able to go out and model things up, and not only model things up in 3D, be able to 3D print it, but also still being able to use CNC and other functions within rendering and other functions in there. I think it's good to hear from you, and I appreciate that you know, this is still the intention to go.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of this comes down to trust, and it's difficult to trust a large corporate organization because I think if there's trust there amongst the community, if there's a mistake that's made and it's a genuine mistake, people will trust that we'll get it right, you know, that we'll amend it. And I think we've got to do more to work on that with the community because, you know, I think, like I said right at the beginning, all of these changes were intended with, you know, good intentions, I should say. The whole point of these changes was to protect that investment and to ensure that those users could carry on enjoying that technology. And, you know, I think we just got to do a better job at that communication. But that really is the goal. That's our ultimate objective, is to make sure we stand behind that personal entitlement, just like we do with the educational entitlement and the commercial entitlement. And it's just making sure we get the balance right between them so that it's a viable business, that we can continue to support that technology, and that each of those communities continues to benefit from it equally.
Thank you so much, Steve. I appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Not a problem, Lars. Pleasure speaking to you.
All right, take care.
All right, bye.
That was the part 1 of this video, to make sure that you get the information. Part number 2 is that we're going to go over what is really changing. And the best resource to learn about the new STEP update and these different changes is to go to the Fusion 360 blog. Here, my good friend and colleague, Kaching, wrote a blog post that I have linked down in the description. So let's just take a quick look at what the different items are. Scrolling down the page, you will find this table. Now to the left, you can see what is in Fusion today, and on the right, you can see what is coming with these new changes. Now, the first item is design and 3D modeling. So everything's going to stay as they have been when it comes to sketching, extrusion, surface modeling, sculpting, all the standard mechanical CAD type of environments. Data management stays the same, and the same goes for 3D printing. Unlimited project storage have caused some confusion. Going forward, you can have 10 active editable documents and an unlimited amount of archive documents. So there's no limit to how many files you can have in Fusion 360. It comes down to how you interact with them. So let's say that you open up an assembly that has 50 or 75 components in it. That assembly will still act and behave the way that you would expect. It comes down to when you start editing the individual components within that assembly. So you can have 10 active documents, and if one of the components you want to edit is not in that queue of 10 active, you'll just have to archive one or more of those active documents, and then you can make the component you want to edit active. So just a little bit of friction, but nothing that should stop anybody to get their job done. Export file types also got some attention, and you just heard from Hooper that STEP has been added back in there. I want to highlight that this was only export. Import was never a problem, so you could still bring in McMaster-Carr or go to GrabCAD and bring in a STEP file from there. Now from export, you can of course export out STLs, OBJs, and now also STEP. But I also want to include that there's also files like Inventor files can be exported that can be opened up by most other CAD systems. For manufacturing, there's no multi-axis milling, what I would call advanced 4-axis and 5-axis, probing, automatic tool chains, and rapid feed. About the two last items, automatic tool chains and rapid feed. You heard from Hooper that this was to kind of creating a difference between the commercial license and the personal license. But you can still post out your code. You can open that code up in a text editor, and you can add your MO6 for the automatic tool change. You can change some G01s to G00 for your rapid feeds. For documentation, 2D drawings, it's single sheet and print only. The biggest thing here, I think, is that we removed that you can print directly to a PDF. Now, I don't want to give you all the tricks, but you can go out and download a free PDF driver, and then you can still print your Fusion 360 2D drawing to a PDF. But again, it's about adding a little bit of friction and separation between the commercial and the personal license. Rendering is local only. And that just means that you couldn't offload it all to the cloud and utilize the powers of the cloud while you can get more work done locally at your machine. Again, this should really not affect anybody on a personal license. Next, you will see in the table we have simulation, and that is not going to be available in the personal license going forward. I want to highlight that this does not mean the simulation in CAM, where you can simulate your tool path. That is still available. We are talking about FEA, talking about doing static stress or nonlinear studies. That is now only available in the commercial license. Generative design is not available. And then you heard Hooper talking a little bit about the extensions. So this was something that I got a few emails about. So we were a little bit confusing there about what we call extensions compared to what is called add-ons. So extensions is the advanced manufacturing and high-level kind of toolpath and other functions. The add-ins for you to, for example, use gears or other things that is still available, still for you to use. So extensions really just is talking about raising the level of some of the capabilities within Fusion. Collaboration is staying on a basic access, and the same with electronics. Now to the last item of this video, my opinion. And this is where I'm going to flash that this is my opinion, not my wife, not my kids, and not Autodesk, my employer. I know many of you have spent hours on learning Fusion 360. Like I said earlier, Fusion 360 is still completely free and, in my opinion, totally functional for you to do your personal projects. Rest assured that the time that you've spent on learning Fusion 360 is not wasted. The models that you have created are yours. You own them, and you can download them to a hard drive if you like. You can still have fun doing your projects and using Fusion 360. If you feel that these changes are too much of a roadblock, maybe you should consider upgrading to a standard Fusion 360 license with all the bells and whistles as an addition to the hundreds or perhaps thousands that you have spent on machines, tooling, and 3D printers. I know that some of you who are watching this video have decided to explore other options. I totally respect that. You need to do what is best for you. I want to thank you for all the support you've given me over the years, and I hope that one day you and I can meet, have a chat, and drink a beer. I will read all the comments to this video, but I will not respond. It's too difficult for me to manage, to respond, clarify, and then go back and forth. But you can email me. If you email me via larschristiansen.org/contact me, I will respond to you. Link in the description.